All right, so we're going to move forward with insects. Okay, so we did a little bit of insects on Friday. You should have seen a video. If you were virtual, you had to watch Forensic Files. If you were in class, we actually watched Dirty Jobs, because they went and had a whole episode on people who are entomologists who look at insects on a dead body. So insects. Insects are so useful in crime investigation. There's a whole branch devoted to it called forensic entomology. Duties of a forensic entomologist are to record detailed crime scene conditions. So we have to understand the temperature conditions to understand how those insects are going to be affected by it. So the temperature of the area, the moisture of the area, if there's been any weather patterns, the wind, all of that affects how bugs are going to be affected by it. So you have to take all that into account. Then they have to collect the insect evidence above or below the surrounding corpse, which you should have seen with our opener today. So should have seen kind of going through that a little bit. So determining an estimate for the postmortem interval, or PMI, the time between death and the discovery of the body, where that's what we're trying to figure out is, okay, we found the body. How long ago did they die? That's the whole point. Now, last week we talked about livor mortis, algor mortis, rigor mortis, stomach contents, change in the eye, all that kind of stuff. But all those things are permanent after 2 days. So what do I do if the body has been there any longer than 2 days? And sometimes 36 hours, they're all permanent, depending on how fast the temperature is affecting it. So if they're any bit past that, all I know is it's past it. That's all they can help me with. So if it's any bit past that, really what I have to go on is just rate of decay that we've learned from body farms, which we'll talk more about later in the week as body farm stuff is the processes of decay, or insects. So if it's been longer than 2 days, I'm going to look at insects. Here we go. So if insects from another region are found on the corpse, it suggests that a corpse may have been moved. If I find a weird bug on it, on the person that doesn't belong in that area, well, then that bug was there when they were killed and then hatched after the body had moved and is now in this new location. So provide important evidence to determine a primary crime scene. So because this is where the body is that where the body was murdered, or is that just where the body was placed? Remember, primary crime scene means where did the murder occur? Secondary is where the body is now, if there are two places. Testify in court is something that they have to do, a forensic entomologist would have to do to explain the insect-related evidence found at the crime scene. So here's just some pictures of some of the tools that you should have seen in the opener as well a little bit, but we kind of skipped over it. So we have a hand net to catch them. Okay, I'm trying to catch the insects. And then you're going to place them in jars. Some of them you want to stop their growth. So you're going to collect those insects and kill them by putting them in a vial of alcohol, which kills them pretty instantaneously. So you have their growth right then. Because I want to know their growth amount on the body right now. So some of them have to be put in those kind of containers. And then most maggots, so maggots to me the most common thing, if the body is still fairly fresh, maggots are the most common thing to find. A maggot is a fly larva. Okay. So pretty much all the different types of flies have a slightly different growth rate, but all their maggots look very similar. So to figure out what kind of flies are on the person, generally you have to collect some of those maggots in containers where they can keep living, take them back to the lab, let them grow into a full adult fly, and then we'll know what kind of fly it was. So we know how old that maggot was at that size. So kind of just a weird thing. So all maggots look very similar. So it's kind of hard to tell what kind of fly it is until you have the adult version to compare it to. There's also going to be different types of containers. There's other types of bugs other than flies, but those are the most common. I always yawn at these. I don't yawn at any other time, but when I make these videos, I do. It says, why are insects used in forensic science? So in most seasons and environments, insects colonize a dead body almost immediately. If the insect can get to the body, it's fast after death. Their rate of development and species dynamics over time can be used to accurately determine time since death. Okay. After 72 hours, entomological evidence is the most accurate method to determine the elapsed time. So like I said, all those other methods we talked about before don't work anymore. when we're up to the 72 hours and really even kind of sooner. So the only thing that I'm left with is I need to look at the insect activity. That's going to be how I'm going to have tell time of death if it's been a little while. The first stages of decomposition give off an odor which attracts insects to lay their eggs on the body, sometimes within minutes of a person dying. And those eggs tend to hatch within 24 hours. So there can be already maggots, already things eating the body 24 hours after the person has died. So blowflies come when it's fresh. Beetles don't come until a little later, 3 to 6 months. Other types of flies and beetles, 4 to 8 months, mites 6 to 12 months. So it's just kind of giving you a little time frame of when these critters would show up, how long the body had been deceased. Okay, so as an example, blowflies are attracted to a body immediately following after death. So blowflies are one of the first flies there. They look like this. The 4 stages of the development is an egg. Okay, so the eggs will be laid. Then they go through 3 larval stages of different sizes, and they molt their skin. Gross. Then they turn into a pupa, which if you know what a cocoon is, or a chrysalis for a butterfly, same thing, but for a fly. And then they are an adult when they hatch. So just like a butterfly goes through pretty metamorphosis, so do flies. So this larva stage here is like the caterpillar stage for a butterfly. So as the body decomposes, it attracts different insects. Entomologists identify species of insects that have been present on the body and reconstruct a timeline. So it's just kind of showing you the process. So eggs are laid, they hatch within 23 hours, and they're this little maggot. And then they are within 27 hours for this size, within 22 more hours they're this size. And with 130 hours after the body has died, you're going to find pupas on the body. And then those pupas will hatch 143 hours after that into their adult size. So that can help me tell time of death based on which ones I'm finding. Now, just as for reference, if you've never seen a maggot in real life, first, I see these pictures and I think of wiggly worms. They are so tiny. Okay, so these are really blown up. Maggots are they're like rice. Okay, they're like rice size, and then they get a little bigger than rice, but they start teeny tiny, so much smaller than you would think. It's kind of less gross when you think about it like that. They're real small. As a corpse progresses through stages of development, other insects will arrive. So wasps, flies, beetles, moths, ants, bees, and mites come later. Just another example of how we calculate time of death. So based on the type of fly that it is, we have to, so an entomologist is going to be very well knowledgeable. They're going to have knowledge on different types of species of insects and how fast they go through their life cycles. And how big they are compared at different life cycles, so they can compare them to the things they find on the body. So it's just kind of showing you the size. So the first larval stage is only 5 millimeters long, then it gets up to 10, and then up to 14 to 16 millimeters long, which a millimeter is small. So this is 10. I don't know if I can get it closer. So just nail to nail is 10, and that's their halfway through phase. So they're not going to get much bigger than this, and they're going to start so small. Here's some early decomposition flies. So ones that come in early, and then late composition flies. So coming in later with these house flies and a cheese skipper. Early decomposition beetles. So these carrion beetles, early to late. So kind of mid-range rove or clown beetles. Late stage decomposition. So these are going to come in for the skin and bones and things that are harder to break down. So scientists have collected information on stages of development at given temperatures for all types of insects known to feed on corpses. This allows forensic entomologists to estimate time of death based on all the evidence we've collected over time. So what can insects tell you? Postmortem interval, which means the interval of time between when I found the body and when the person died. Whether the body was moved. Okay, so if there's wrong kind of insects on them, the body's been moved. Whether the body was disturbed. You can kind of tell based on placement of the eggs. Presence and position of wound sites. That one we didn't talk about. But if they're, why is that not specifically in our notes and we're just bringing them up now? I need to add that in to make sure it's written down for people in here. Because that's pretty important. The first place where an insect is going to go. Remember, maggots are teeny, tiny little rice-sized things. And they don't have teeth. They're just little wiggly caterpillar things. So they can't just be laid anywhere in our body. They won't be able to eat it. Okay, they're tiny little mouth parts. So the only places they can be placed are fleshy, soft places in our body, places that are already open. So that'd be our eyes. Eyes are our first place for maggots to go. In of your nose, in your ear, in your mouth. If you're naked when you die, there are other places into your body that we will not discuss. Okay? So those are where maggots will be in the beginning. So if you're finding maggots in their chest right here, like you're seeing a big old hole of maggots, okay, maggots can't eat through it on their own. So that means they had a bullet wound, they had a knife wound, they had something there that the fly would choose to lay eggs there because the maggots couldn't get through it on their own. If the victim used drugs or was poisoned, so the type of drug in their system can speed up or slow down the growth of insect, and you just kind of have to like know that. So they do a tox screen on the person. If they had like cocaine in their system, that's a stimulant. It speeds up the process of the growth cycle of the flies. So then what you would normally have thought of how long the flies had been there, you're gonna speed it up because they grew faster. Length of time of abuse or neglect in living victims. Sadly, if people are really neglected or abused, they can get these kind of insects on them, like if they were tied down, that kind of abuse. They can get these kind of insects on them just because they're not moving a lot, which is gross. But you can kind of tell that if a person has it on them, definitely telling you abuse, because normally living, like we're not going to have those kind of things on us. Okay, done with insect notes.